Hello. Welcome to our second podcast, Together podcast. Are we looking forward to this, guys?
Yeah, boy.
So this week we're going to talk about worship. But before we do that, I just want to introduce you to some amazing guys who we've got on our podcast this week. So they are part of Together Worship, and they also do all sorts of other amazing things. But I'll let them tell you whatever they want about themselves.
I'll let you start.
I'm going first then. Jordan, nice to meet you. I am the worship pastor here, and I'm involved with No Turning Back Music over in the US. I'm involved in the Out Loud project. But my main thing and the key to my heart is the worship team here, and I have the privilege of leading these guys as well as a couple of others that are not with us today. But yeah, that's me.
I am Madison, and I am the MD for Together Worship. I am also involved with the whole Out Loud stuff, but I've got more to come on that. I'm not fully there, but I've got more to come.
I'm Lydia. I'm new to the team. Well, I don't know how long have I been here now?
New, but feels like she's been here forever.
About 5 months, is it now? 5-6 months now.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
So yeah, I'm drummer and I sing a bit as well. That's me.
She can also play the guitar and play the piano and, all these things she's missing out on.
Yeah. These guys are multi-talented. They can do a lot of things. It's great to have you with us today, guys. So we are discussing the topic of worship. So we might have people that's with us that don't come to church. And so first I just want to start off with what does worship mean? What is worship? I looked up what the dictionary said about worship. And the dictionary says it's the feeling or expression of reverence and adoration. Or the British, it says it's used in addressing or referring to an important or higher ranking person. So the thing that came to mind when I was thinking about this was, I used to hear it quite a lot when I was younger, but I'd hear like, oh yeah, he absolutely worships the ground that she walks on. And you're like, yeah, that is, from a worldly perspective, that's kind of, I think that's a good way of looking at it. It's something that you really hold high in your life, something that you love a lot, something that you just look up to and that you adore. That's the kind of way that I would say that what worship in a worldly sense is. It's something that you hold close to your heart. But we just want to take that a little bit further and help you guys to understand what worship is for us as Christians and why we love worship so much and what it does for us as people, not just as individuals, but as a church, as a group.
Yeah.
So we just want to explore that a little bit more. So do you guys want to tell me what worship means to you?
Yeah. Take it, I'll start then, because I agreed. I'd say worship to me is it's a way I can connect with God through. It's the way I connect with God the most. I feel His presence and I feel Him a lot more in worship because I just connect more through that.
Yeah.
I feel like I can concentrate more when I'm worshipping because prayer's all good, prayer is really good, but me praying, I have to really focus and I'm like, right, I need 10 minutes to just get myself into the zone, never mind that, do you know what I mean? So, but worship, I can just literally sing my heart out and I just feel Him already, just there in the moment.
Yeah.
So.
That's good. For me, I mean, when we did Zeal conference, we sort of spoke about this question, and I said for me, worship, like it's love.
Yeah.
Like when I'm worshipping, I'm just like pouring my heart out to God and saying like, for everything that you've done, sending your son and Him dying for us, like I physically cannot do anything more to show like how much I love Him.
Yeah.
So that's sort of what it is for me, and like same as you, it's that when you're in worship, you just forget about everything else. You forget about who's there, and like when we're on stage and playing music and stuff, you forget that there's actually other people here,
Yeah.
because it's just like it's a you and God thing.
Yeah. Worship for me is quite simply just giving God his breath back. I think, it goes back to when he created Adam from dust, and all he did was breathe air into that dust. And I think that's the same with all of us. It's his air we breathe. And when I come to worship and I come to lead worship, it's just giving him back breath that, I don't own. I don't deserve it. I don't own it. And it's just giving him it back.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, obviously we've gone from an earthly perspective there to a quite, personal thing. And so, worship is, it's when you adore something or you really love something. And one song that always comes to mind when we talk about this it's a Matt Redman song called One Name Alone. And part of it says, everybody praises the thing they love. Everyone announces what they adore. Where you lay your treasure, there is your heart. There is your heart, there you find your heart. And that's kind of so if we think about marriage and family, that's where we adore our family. We adore the people that are around us. We really love them. And so we lift them up and we encourage them. But then for us as Christians, it's kind of on a different level. We're talking about worship in church and worship with God. And so we have come to that place where we've found God, we've found Jesus, and he is the most important thing in our life. And that doesn't mean that our families mean any less than what your families have mean to you. But there's just something about putting God first.
Yeah.
And when you put God first, everything else falls into place. And that's what always makes me think, where can you see in my life that I'm putting all my effort in, and where can you see that that I'm making an effort and what I'm talking about, and how you can just tell, can't you, by the way people talk about things, that what they really enjoy, what their interests are, and what they love doing. And I think for us, it's as individuals, the first and foremost, it's just the adoration of Jesus, the adoration of God and who he really is. We've found that.
Yeah.
We've found that, and it doesn't stop anybody else having that place in your life. But actually, when you find God in your life and you exalt him above everything else, it only magnifies and makes everything else so much better.
Yeah, Aaron Baxter, shout out, puts it like this: whatever has your heart's affection, mind's attention, and soul's ambition effectively has your worship.
Yeah.
And I think that just, because there's that many people, you go out now, you speak to a couple of random fellas on the street, their heart's attention and heart's affection is probably on a game of football.
Yeah.
They will go to a game of football and they'll scream at the top of their lungs for this team, because they want this team to win.
Yeah.
And I think, that just puts it in a bit of perspective as how we look at it and what we perceive it as. He has our heart's affection, he has our mind's attention,
Yeah.
and he has a soul's ambition. And that's really the core of what, especially this team, is all about. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good analogy when you look at football. You tend to hear a lot of people speaking about that, don't you? If you went to a football match and the heart and the passion that you put into that, and the way that you support your team and you shout for them, and do we do the same for God? And so I think first and foremost, I just want to say, if you don't know God and you don't know who he really is, then explore that first, because you'll not understand where we're coming from and fully get us until you know that personal relationship with God. It's all about it being personal, and that's where we've got that relationship and it's personal to us.
Yeah.
And so because of what he's done for us, we put him first in our lives. We put him first, and we just adore him. And that's the kind of thing, I think back to that, the times that I've heard that, and it's true that, do you praise him and do you give him your heart like you would support? Do you shout for him for what
Yeah.
he's done for us, like you would if you went to support your local football team? And that's a question that we can all ask ourselves, and it's a challenge as well to say, well, actually, where is Jesus in my life? Is he first? Am I putting other things before him? And that does not mean by any means that we can't enjoy football and we can't go and do other things and enjoy other things in life. But I love that analogy. So apart from obviously so we're talking about that we're lifting somebody up, but does that always have to be singing and shouting? And do we just give worship to Jesus by being in a worship setting?
I think the key thing for everybody, but mainly like your worship teams and your congregation members, worship's not a music genre. It's not a section on Spotify that's, that is worship. Like, worship's not defined by Spotify, it's not defined by Apple Music. Worship is whatever you want it to be, whatever your way of giving back looks like. And we'll probably get into it later. We were all designed to do song worship. We've all been given vocal cords. We've all been given hands to be the percussion. We've all been given the assets to be part of the worship team in terms of singing. But I think worship can look like packing chairs away.
Yeah.
Worship can look like cleaning toilets. Worship can look like helping out with teas and coffees, being on worship welcome team. I think that it covers whatever your way of giving back to God looks like, whether that means you come half hour before a service and you stand on the door and you welcome people in. That helps prepare for the song worship later, because you've given a good vibe at the door. But that's your way of showing, we adore you, I worship you, and I'm coming half an hour early. It might be inconvenient, but I'm coming half an hour early because this is how I want to give back.
Yeah. I think as well, it's important to look at that. We are going to look at worship as in a worship team and singing, because that's our passion. That's who we all are. Like, we absolutely love that, and I think people connect on a deeper level in different ways with God. But our way is definitely worship. Like, we definitely connect straight away with God through our worship. But it's just to help people understand that worship is not just about your time singing together. But we're going to come on to all that, because it's so powerful that it's powerful. But like, worship can also be that actually when I go to work, and even though my boss is not very pleasant, I do my job to the best of my ability, because I'm not doing it for my boss. I'm doing it for Jesus. I'm doing it to represent him and who he is here. And sometimes that can be a bit, it can be hard, because we can be in a harsh situation that it's not our fault and we can be being treated wrongly. But it's the way that if we think, over the last few years especially, I've thought of when I've been at work and I've gone in, one of the things that I always talk about is I used to go in toilets and find all little bits of tissue, because there were the one things that you pull out, they'd be all over the floor, and it used to really annoy me that if you've dropped them, why don't just pick them up? But then I used to think about the cleaner that has to come in and do all that. So if I were in the toilet, I was like, do you know what, like, if I just walk away from that, I'm just leaving that job for somebody else. And it's not my job as such, but let's just be Jesus. It's looking after each other and showing your love through that, and actually knowing that in everything that you do, like you say, it's his breath. So in everything that we do, we can worship God by doing it to the best of our ability. So I started just picking. I was like, right, while I'm in here, I'm just going to pick them all up, the ones that I've found, because it's not right that, I've not put them there, but it's not right that one person's got to come in and then clean all this up when someone else has left that there. And so I just wanted to explore that part of worship is not just about the singing, But obviously a big part of our podcast today will be about how what the power of worship in song does, because that's where we can come from, that's what we know.
Yeah. I think just before you move on, just a key thing for people watching, in terms of loving other people, they might not know that they're part of his family, but through them acts and through loving people, that's how that they come to the family.
Yeah.
Because like I can probably guarantee the cleaner that you are helping out doesn't go to church on a Sunday, but it's made their life easier. And if they ever walked in and saw that you were doing something for them, that you could just be sat at your desk doing our work, but you're doing something to make their life easier, it shows them there's something different about that person. Because in this day and age, you just don't see people going out of their way to do something for someone. I think worship helps reset the fact that, you know, you're not the centre of everything and you're not the be all and end all. It puts it as a way of putting you back in your place of there's something greater than me, there's something greater than football, there's something greater than thing, and I'm going to do what I can do to help them around me.
It's about having that servant heart, isn't it, and that servant mentality. Like Jesus came to serve.
Yeah.
He came and he served people. And it's knowing that, you know, you might not feel appreciated for everything that you do at work or even in church, but actually you're not doing it for the people that are leading the church or anybody else that's in there. What you're doing, you're serving God.
Yeah.
So you're serving him, and although that person might never have seen that I picked up those toilet rolls, God sees it. God sees everything, and so he might give me that opportunity to actually get to speak to that person. You know, he can open doors that we can't, and he can put us into situations.
Yeah.
And so it's just knowing that actually it's all about the one.
Yeah.
It's all about our adoration for the one, and that we serve one person, and that he comes first.
Yeah.
And so even though the world might treat us a little bit different, you know, we are still serving God through that, even though that might be difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, just on that as well, like, Denver messaged me once, and like he was just talking to me a bit after we'd had his team weekend, and like he was saying to me, like what you said, worshipping always just, you know, standing and singing, it can be putting chairs away or doing whatever, and he said same like just buying someone a coffee, that you're not doing it for yourself. In worship, you're not getting anything for yourself, you're doing it for God. So it's like buying someone that coffee, like you said, opens that conversation. So, oh, why have you just done that?
Yeah.
And, you know, and then you can go on from that.
Yeah. Do you want to add anything, Madison?
Well, earlier when you said that about like God's given us his vocal cords and he's given us his hands for percussion and stuff. When we did the Zeal conference, I wrote down Isaiah 43 verse 21, and it says, I made them and they will sing songs of praise. And I thought of that, and then I looked at my notes and realised it was there, and I was like, well, yeah, that's right, because God's just given us what we like. We don't need all of this, but to set an atmosphere, we use it, and that can really help some other people come into that place of worship who struggle in that area.
Yeah.
And it just made me think of that verse.
Yeah, that's good. So, looking at worship then, from a church perspective and from a Christian perspective, so what does worship do? Why do we worship? Why do we even worship? And what does it do? What happens when we worship?
I've got some place. Well, like, I'm just going to be going, when we did Zeal conference, but when we did Zeal conference, like I talked about, and you talked about the power of worship, because when you worship, it is powerful. And in Bible, in Acts 16, Paul and Silas, they're in prison, they're physically chained down, like they cannot do anything. But the one thing that they can do, what they're enabled to do, is worship. And when they did worship, you know, all the chains fell off and they were free, and that's what happened. And it's like, things like that could happen today. Do you know what I mean? Worship is powerful today. It's not just back then that that things happened and like healing and miracles and things like that can all happen today when you do worship.
Yeah.
Well, in Too Good to Not Believe, the song, Brendan Lake's in it, by the way, guys. Well, he says in that song that he's seen all these miracles and he starts listing them, and he's like, when that man was able to walk and when the dead girl came back to life, it's like those miracles happen today.
Yeah.
And I feel like some people, when they're worshipping, they want to see that, but they're not believing to see that. They're not having that faith that it's going to happen. And I feel like we need to, like, I like to give my absolute best when I'm in worship, because like you said, it's just giving him everything back.
Yeah.
And I feel like when we do that, God's thinking, well, you believe in me, you love me like the way I love you, so the miracle you're asking for, I'm going to give you that miracle because it's what I can do. I can do it, and you are believing I can do it. So
Yeah. So I've got 3 points. Worship is a privilege. And the way I look at that, so cut a long story short, so Satan used to be one of the angels. And he got greedy, he got selfish, and he was the worship leader of heaven. And he was cast out, and that's a story in itself. But my main point is God didn't replace the worship leader of heaven, because he didn't need to, because he's happy for us to do it. And when I look at it like that, he's got an army of angels, and to not replace his worship leader because he's got us to do it actually puts you in sort of a whoa. You know what I mean? Like the sound of heaven and all the angels singing holy, holy, holy. He leaves that place to come and join us in song. Mm-hmm. And I can, Elevation are awesome, Bethel are awesome, Hillsong are awesome. But, the sound of heaven, all the angels just singing holy, holy, holy. That I wouldn't want to leave that room. Yeah. But he chooses to leave that room to come and join us. And I think it is a privilege every time we get up. It's a privilege to know he's in the room. And to know that, that there's the privilege of leading his people in worship, and, that comes with the being on team and all that. But the real privilege is the fact that he chooses to leave heaven and to join us in the room for our worship. And he sees it as good enough. He never looks at it as not being good enough. So that's my point on it's a privilege. Worship exchanges hands with worry. So people, whatever your situation looks like, worship, when you come back to the heart of it and you're in it and you're focused on it, the main part you've got to focus, you can't just come into the room and expect that the team are going to do all the work for you. It's worship is a one-on-one. We're here as a team to lead you into that and to encourage you into that. But if you're not in a place where you're doing it for you, then that connection's not going to work. It will work with the others around you, but it'll not work with you because you're not doing it. But Matthew 6:24 says, "Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own." And worship can help with leaving it. Worship can help with putting it down. And, I've been through some stuff personally. I know you guys have been through some stuff personally. As a team, really, we're broken people. But the beauty of it is every time we step up to the worship, I get to leave that at his feet. I get to leave it behind. I can exchange the worry with him for peace. And then my final point is worship is our weapon. And we've done a song recently called Our Eyes Are On You, which these guys are not a massive fan of. But this is why I love this song. When the worst happens, this is 2 Chronicles 29. When the worst happens, whether war or flood or disease or famine, and we take our place before the temple and pray out our pain and trouble, we know that you will listen and give glory. God, we don't know what to do, but our eyes are on you. And that's what worship is. Yeah. No matter what battle you're facing, you don't need to go out there and write that status. You don't need to go out there and have a physical a fight with him. None of that is needed, because all you need to do is come back here, fix your eyes on him, and he's got it. He will take that battle, whatever that ends up looking like. Just trust that God's got it. When you don't know what to do, just fix your eyes on Jesus.
Wow, there's a lot there that you can unpick and you can go into more detail. I think the first thing I want to say is, firstly, it's a personal thing, isn't it? Worship's personal. So like we said, you know, we might have that spouse that we absolutely adore, that we love, or as family that we adore and we love, or as football team that we adore and we love. And for us, that's Jesus, that's God. And, you know, God, he wants to be first. He wants to be first in our lives. But there's power in putting him first in our lives.
Yeah.
And there's power in the personal worship, and just where that can take you and to a whole new level and get to know God even more. But I want to focus on the when we come together to worship. So like music on itself is powerful. Music can bring people together.
Yeah.
You know, when you go to a concert, you've been recently, haven't you, Madison, and like just wow, when people all know the same song and they're all just supporting that person and you're all singing together in there, and it's just so, music on its own is so powerful. You know that you can listen to a snippet of a song that was from 20 years ago, and it takes you right back to that moment, and that can be a great experience, or it can be an emotional experience. And it's the same even like today. We can worship, like we can set atmospheres with our music.
Yeah.
But it's not just about the music, and it's about the worship and what happens when we come together.
Yeah.
So although we're one church and we're one body, we all look really different around the world. Like there's different tribes, different tongues. You know, we all work in different ways, different denominations, but it's the same God. It's the same God. But when we come together in worship, there's just something just changes, and we can forget the differences.
Yeah.
We can forget the things that make us different, or we can forget the things that, like our grievances with each other, that just it just goes out of the window.
Yeah.
And although we're not all the same, as in we do it the same, for those moments, we're one.
Yeah.
It brings a unity that nothing else can bring. Like we can come together and we're just all focusing on one thing.
Yeah.
And we're just worshiping God, and our eyes are fixed on him, like saying that. We might not know what to do, and we might know what to do, but we're still just going to worship him for who he is, and not necessarily what he can do for us. And so what kind of experiences have you guys had when you've been in a worship setting with, like, have you found it different when you're on your own to when you're with other people? So when you're worshiping just on your own at home, or when you're out on a walk, or you're listening to your worship music, or you're in the car, do you find it different to when you're worshiping with a whole bunch of people in the room?
Well, just on that, I get like from a young age, I were all about the vibe. And the youth conference I went to was Audacious, and their vibe was like, it was like rock and roll at that time. A lot of heavy guitar, and that was the bit that we all went for and all enjoyed. It went until I got older, and you're at what were one event, or I'm at YA or Rock Nations, when it gets to the quieter moments and you realise, hang on, yeah, the vibe's cool, but I can feel more than just the music now.
Yeah.
And I think, especially at a young age, it's easy to feel the music as opposed to feel the spirit. And that's one thing that changed my whole dynamic on what worship were, and my whole thought process on what worship were. The minute that you start to realise, hang on, I can feel more than just the music. And whatever that looks like for different people. For me, I just get this tingling sensation from head to toe, like something is physically passing through me, something's moving up and down through me. And it's unbelievable. I would now rather sit in a peaceful, quiet moment than vibe. I still enjoy the vibe, but I like sitting in the peaceful moments and like just, because the feel of the fact that God's just got you in his hands and his presence is flowing through you, there is no other feeling like it. And you're that focused on what's happening that you don't think about what's coming up. You don't think about what you've done in your past. You don't have to worry about anything because all you can think about is, whoa. And in the comparison between a room full of people and not so many, I'd say some of our best worship moments in the past year have been on team night as opposed to a Sunday service or an event. I think, events are brill, Sunday services are brill, and, you still feel God in it and all that, but when you come together just as the worship team and you know that the heart is the same, you know that the focus is the same, and you can express yourself in a new way because you don't have to be scared.
Yeah.
I think that opens doors to what God can do. So I'm not saying that the events and all that, you can't get that feeling because you can. But when you're in a room of people that the focus is the same, the heart's the same, God can unlock. There's a number of things God can unlock and God can do. And that would, personally, that's what I'd say. I said I've felt more of his spirit recently in team weekend as opposed to a service.
I'd say I was like kind of similar. Like it was the music and the vibe and everything that was really. It was like a really key point of keeping me in church a few years ago. And then we went to Rock Nations, but I think it was the year I went by myself with, not with your guys, I went with someone else. And I just said like a whole moment to myself at the front, and I just broke down, and it's like one of those moments where you don't even want to leave. You don't want to leave the building. You don't even want to take a step to the side to let someone pass because you're like, I want to let go of the moment and I don't want to. And it was just one of those, and it was like, I could feel him. Like that was one of the first times I felt him properly in worship. And I feel like since then, I've had a true appreciation for the actual coming to worship, not just coming to this song's cool, or this one's my favourite because it just sounds cool. Yeah. And I feel like since then I've just had a really good moment in worship, and then Lydia joined us in December, and then I felt like I was, because you're a lot more self-conscious when you're on stage about people looking at you, so I felt like for a while I was trying to focus on worshipping God, but I was too busy thinking about everyone around me. And then Lydia got here, and she just takes it to another level. She just don't care what anyone thinks, and she would just, like the first week she were here, she were on her knees, and she didn't care what anyone else thought. She had her arms up in the air, and I was like, yeah, that is what I need to do. I just need to stop caring. And then for like a whole month, I just cried every single week when I came to worship, because I got that I got refreshed in my worship, and I just felt him all over again, and it was just they were key moments for me in my worship.
Just on a side note before we go to Lydia, for those, whether you're young or whether you're old, if what you hang on to is the vibe, and after hearing this you think, I've been doing it wrong, don't worry about that, don't panic about that, because the breakthrough that we're talking about and the experience that we're talking about is literally a moment away.
Yeah.
And every time you're in worship, if your heart and your focus is on what is on God, that moment is literally right there. So if all you come for is the vibe, if all that you have been coming for is the vibe, that's not a negative thing. You are still hanging on to God, whether it's through a vibe or whether it's through his presence. But I can promise you, the minute that moment in his presence happens, your whole dynamic's going to change. Your whole thought process on church is going to change. Your whole thought process on God is going to change. But hang in there, because the moment is literally right there.
Yeah, I was watching something recently as well that were talking about how, you know, like what you said, these guys might think, oh, like, I'm doing it wrong, I'm coming for wrong reasons, and you're not, because as long as your focus is on God,
Yeah,
like that's all you need. And like, don't stop just as you're about to take that step. Like you're probably literally just on this line, and you're about to take this step into this breakthrough, and you think, you know what, no, I'm not going to do it anymore, and you've stopped yourself from, you know, having that breakthrough and doing whatever you want to do. Going back to the question, what you said, like, I think I'm the same as you guys. When I was younger, because I've always, like, I've played drums from when I was young, so I was like, oh, I love playing drums on a Sunday. Like, it's
drumming
cool.
is about the vibe. It is about the vibe.
True drummers here, guys.
But like when I was younger, that's, you know, it's not all that I went to church for, but that were like 90%. I was like, I just love playing drums on a Sunday. And like, it's only recently, like in the past few years, that I've actually come to you know what, that's not what it's about, really.
Yeah.
Like, me and my mum and dad have recently gone through like a period of sort of knowing like what church to be in, and you know, I followed my mum and dad with that, and if I'd have not had that sort of breakthrough and realising what sort of church actually were and what worship actually is, you know, I might not have gone back, because I weren't drumming for about a year in church, but I still went because I weren't going for drums.
Yeah.
And I mean, now I've, you know, gone away from my mum and dad, and I've come here with you, and it's like I've took another step.
Yeah.
And I just feel like with you guys in a room, it's like there's just something different. There's just something so different, and like when you're worshipping, I feel like if you're sort of new to being comfortable doing it, you need to be with people that you are comfortable with.
Yeah.
Because
100%.
if you're with people that you feel like are going to judge you, you know, you're not going to take that step, you're not going to want to raise your arms. And I feel we've all probably gone through, you know, a period of time where we felt like that. But as soon as you know your people are, there's something about being in a room with them that's just totally different.
Yeah.
Like there's something different about being able to like uplift each other. If someone's down, you know, they're not getting back up on themselves, we're picking them up.
Yeah.
We're all picking them up, we're all helping them together, and I feel like that's something so powerful in worship, when you're with who you know is going to pick you up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think going back to the vibe, and now you talk about when you were younger, I think like there's nothing wrong with the vibe, because when you look back, you know, God has given us these talents and these abilities to be able to play these instruments as well in worship. And although we don't necessarily need all that, because we can just worship Him with what we've got, it helps.
Yeah.
And like you said, when we've talked about music, and that music just brings people together and it helps you to connect, I think that in the vibe, when you're younger, there's something bringing you back.
Yeah.
It's not just that you think, you know, because the songs are talking about, they're giving praise and they're giving worship to Jesus. So it's not just the song. God's in the vibe.
Yeah.
You know, and if that's how you're connecting at minute, then keep connecting like that. But I think He's calling you deeper into a deeper relationship. And there's some point when I think we all experience that, when we just go, do you know what? Although I love that vibe, that point there, like something different's happened, and I've just experienced God in a whole new way. You know, you talked about that you feel a tingling, and when Madison talked about that you cried for a few weeks. We all experience Him different. Yeah. And on the weekend that we've just had, the Together at the Cross, even in I've experienced it before and might have been once at a conference here and once there and once there. And there's times in worship when you feel like you either just want to burst into tears, or you just feel so emotional, or you feel so loved, and you're absolutely fine, 5 minutes before. There's no reason, you're not particularly stressed, there's not really going off, but there's just something, and it's the presence of God, and it's for some of us, in that vibe, it helps us to be like, do you know what, this is like, it helps us to go further and to step out and to give him all we've got. But also, at the weekend, like I said, it's the first time we always kind of say, and I've always been taught that it's the worship team that leads you into God's presence. You know, we usher in the presence of God and we lead the people in. And yeah, we do that.
Yeah.
But actually, just speaking his word brings God's presence. And God's not just in the worship, as in worshipping him with song. He's there when we're speaking about him and when we're talking about him. And that's what I found, that in all three of the speakers that we had, there was a moment in everyone where I was just like, wow, how incredible is God? How awesome are you? And during Natasha's testimony, I was just like, I literally nearly got up and went to the back, because all I wanted to sob. I just wanted to sob.
Yeah.
And not because I felt any personal connection in a way. It was just the fact that what she'd been through and where she's standing right now, all because of God. And just the power and the presence of God through through her testimony and what she was saying.
Yeah.
And I felt that on the Friday when Andrew spoke, that it was just like he brings you to the feet of Jesus.
Yeah.
Even just through speaking the word. Like, you were like, yeah, I'm right there. He's there. He's here. He's right with me right now. And there's just something different. But don't feel bad either if you don't feel that, you know, some people experience God. You might see that people call what we go down in the spirit, and they might be shaking, or they might be shouting or laughing or crying, real different. And I've not been in that situation, but I know that God's with me because I've experienced him in a different way.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think it's coming from the personal level, it's kind of a bit of both, isn't it? That when you're here together, you're there on a personal level, but you're there on a corporate level as well. And so be encouraged by those that are around you.
Yeah.
You know, step out and just, because it could be, like you say, that next moment where God just steps in and he says that, and he'll let you know in some kind of way that I'm right here.
Yeah.
And so I just want to encourage you to step out and to, like Jordan says, not give up. And God's in the vibe. He's in the vibe.
Yeah.
But search for him a little bit deeper and just look for him in those quieter moments, and he will show up.
Yeah.
So looking at worship together, you know, that it just brings a unity like we can't experience sometimes. Like I've already said, you know, we can have disagreements and we could have even had an argument, but you come into the presence, and if you focus on God, like everything just falls away, and it's like it's all just forgot about because you're just lifting him up. I suppose we've already talked about we've all been changed a bit. We've all been changed in worship. Does anybody want to say anything else regarding worship?
I think it just brings us back to what it's all about. And I think that's why you can have an argument 10 minutes before. But when you get into that atmosphere of worship, it brings you back to where it's all about. You know, the reminder that this is not about me. It's not about whether we want lights on at that point, whether we want him to bring table up at that point. Like, all that fades away because none of that matters. And I think that's why. And I think the one thing that struck me while we were all talking was if everybody turned up on Sunday and left everything at the door, and all they came in and focused on were Jesus, the power in that room and the things that God could do in that room, you can't put a measure on it.
Yeah.
Because everybody's focused on one thing. Yeah. And I think, you know, that's why some Sundays the entire room the atmosphere is great and the whole room is praising Jesus. And then some weeks it's a bit flat. I think it's a bit flat because maybe one of the team's not focused properly. Maybe some of the congregation haven't left things at the door and haven't thought, right now, Jesus is what I'm focusing on when I'm coming into this point. And I think that, you know, if we consciously make that decision every time we enter a place of worship to, no, forget, I'll deal with that when the service is done. If we did that, the chances are the situation you've left, you're not going to have to deal with when you go back, because he's going to have dealt with it in worship.
Yeah.
And I think that if we all make that decision, there ain't a cap on what God could do.
I think that's a process, isn't it? So especially because most of us have not grown up knowing God, or even if you've gone to church, you kind of know about him, but through your parents or just through church. But it's about experiencing him personally and having that personal relationship. And I know that I used to always struggle with, I love worship and I've always just connected with worship, but I struggled with when I felt low, I struggled with coming into worship and with leaving that behind and refocusing. But I think one thing that we'll learn is, and I just want to challenge you that if you feel like that and you feel you can't do that or you're scared to do that, is do it.
Yeah.
I challenge you to do it once, because when we come into the presence of God, when we worship him, something changes us. We just change. We're different every time. And it changes our perspective on things. It changes our focus.
Yeah.
And you just feel so much better when you've done. Even just now, I know that if I'm feeling a bit grumpy or I'm feeling a bit, and I'm worrying about something, I think, do you know what? Just get some worship music on. So if I go for a walk, I put my headphones in and I put it on, and guaranteed, I always feel so much better. Yeah. And I always come out of the end thinking, well, yeah, that problem's still there, but actually, I don't really have to worry about it that much. I've just I can leave it with God, and this is what I can do about it, and I'll just leave the rest. And I just you feel a peace it's just different than before. Yeah. So I think it's just knowing that worship, it just changes everything. It changes us. Because we come into his presence when we worship, we never leave the same. We're always different.
Yeah.
I was watching a chat session on one of the channels that we've got, and someone said that demonic music inspires demonic activity, so obviously bringing worship, it'll inspire worship. Yeah. It'll inspire good things. It'll inspire heavenly activity, not demonic activity. And they said that it fills our toolbox. I was like, I really love that they said it fills our toolbox. So it's like all the things that we're worrying about and nattering about, and and when we come to God, and the things that we feel inadequate about, the things that we feel that I can't serve there and I can't do that for God because I'm not good enough, I'm not intelligent enough, I'm not qualified enough. Yeah. Actually, when we've come into worship and we bring that to him, we'll just leave where his toolbox has been filled up a little bit more, that we know that actually we can do that, and we are good enough to do that, and that there's an exchange when we worship him. Yeah. It's like he just pours his presence into us. Yeah. And he lifts us up. In Revelation, it says it talks about the power of others' testimony, delivering others, and the power of testimony in worship, and the Holy Spirit moves in worship. And so, like I've said, that Natasha spoke, and obviously you could hear while she was speaking, but like we've already said, and like you say about the song that Brandon Lake wrote, when we sing, when we worship, things can happen. Yeah. And I think as a team, we've just decided we want to go to that level. We want to be there, and we're not going to be scared. And so we've purposely spent time together, and we've purposely decided to step out of our comfort zones, even with each other, so that we know that we're comfortable with each other. And if you're part of a church, part of a worship team, if you're part of a worship team, I would encourage you to spend time together as a worship team. Spend time together
Yeah.
and just worship God. Just worship God freely, and don't think what are they doing. That's just let them do their thing, and you just do yours, and it all just kind of comes together,
Yeah.
and you experience God, and He's there in your presence.
Yeah.
Like you've never experienced him before, and it does change you. Like, we have come to say that you've not been with us for that long. Like, I feel like you've always been with us, and but I feel as a team, we've just come so far from where we were in a matter of a few months.
Yeah.
And that's just by being ourselves and just worshipping God with all that we've got. So yeah, we're going to use these talents that we've got. We're going to step out of his comfort zones. We're going to do things that we've not done before. But if you're just in church, in the congregation, I just want to encourage you to step out.
Yeah.
Step out this week in worship. It's not about who's sat next to you. You might be missing that one thing and that one touch that you need, just because you're scared of what the person next to you is going to think. Yeah. But worship's all about him. Yeah. It's all for his glory. And it's the audience of one. So just think about it like that it's not about everybody else. Even when we're on stage, sometimes there can be nobody really raising their hands or doing anything, but we're all proper, we look like nutheads because we're all proper going for it. But it's just like, do you know what? God deserves it. He deserves it. And if that's how he makes us feel joyful on the inside. He makes us just want to do that. And we want to encourage you to do the same. Yeah. Do any of you have any words of advice for anybody that you want to give? Is there anything that you want to say?
Literally let everything go, give it all to him, and everything, like Jordan said earlier, everything that you want to leave at the door but you keep bringing in with you, just lay it at his feet. You will genuinely feel so much better about everything, about your relationship with God, about all those situations, because you've just given it all to him. And I feel like when you do that, because you're going to go do it, I know you're going to go do it, but when you do it, you're going to just feel like, why did I not do this sooner? Because, and all those cares that you've got about everyone looking at you, like I used to have, just stop thinking about that too. If you think about God, you're not going to think about anything else. Everything's just going to be so much better. That's all I've really got to say.
That my advice for any worship teams would be what you've just said: get together and worship. Because I think that's why it feels like you've been here ages, because the nights that we've had together worshiping as a team, because the heart's the same and whatever, we know you can't truly worship unless you're opening up your heart. And the fact that you've come in and opened up your heart, you've opened it up for God, but you've opened it up in a room where we're present. And I think, there's a level of bonding that happens in worship in terms of team. And I think that's why you integrating into this team has worked so well, because we naturally open his heart in worship anyway, and you've come in and your natural thing was to open your heart in worship. Well, we're all vulnerable. That's the vulnerable moment, because you're opening it up because you feel safe. And I think that will be my main thing for worship teams, because it helps with the bond. It helps people feel like they're more part of the team if they haven't been here long. And it starts something which will then come and happen on the stage. You're going to try new things in a comfortable place. You're going to express yourself more in a comfortable place. But the minute, something clicks, something changes in that worship, it'll start integrating onto stage. And before you know it, you do what you do in private, like you just do it in public as well. Because you're comfortable. You know that the team's got your back. You know that they're going to be doing the same as you. Just advice for teams would be to get together, worship together. And then my advice for other just general people would be get a group of friends around you that can have conversation about stuff like this. Because we've talked a lot about song worship, we've talked a lot about worship, but you know, even just in this conversation, I could feel his presence just in this conversation. So get a close group of friends that you can talk with, you know, talk about what you need to talk about, whatever issues you've got coming up, or whatever things you don't understand and you want to understand, because God turns up in conversation just as much as he turns up in worship. So that would be my thing. Get together with a few friends, start talking, start chatting, be open with each other.
I think my advice would be similar to what you've just said. Like I said earlier, when you know who you're comfortable with, once you pass that barrier of being able to do stuff within that group of people, before you know it, you're comfortable to do that on a Sunday. Like, when I came here, I don't think I'd ever prayed out loud just within a team, because I just didn't feel comfortable. I'd be praying in my head, but I wouldn't speak out loud, and then I thought, you know what, I'm just going to do it. So I did it, and then once I got comfortable doing that within team, me and Mads had prayed for people in services that they hadn't stepped out to do it. We've just felt, you know what, I feel like God's telling us to pray for that person, and we've done it. And it's like, even on team weekend, like on one at points I didn't feel very good, and Mads stepped out and sang a song, and that like lifted everything off my shoulders. But if Mads had not done that, you know, I might not have enjoyed the rest of that night as much as I could have done, because I was carrying a weight that was stopping me from, you know, worshipping truly. And Mads took that step, so I'd just encourage you to take that step, and once you've done that, we're in a group of people that you're comfortable with, you'll be doing it wherever you are.
I think just to finish with, I just want to say that, you know, we're made to worship God. God, that's what we're made for. We're made to worship him. We're made to bring him praise and to give glory to his name. And although it's all about him, and it's not about what we can get from that, the amazing, incredible thing about God is that when we just come to him, like little children, like it tells us in the Bible, when we just come to him and open our heart to him and say, do you know what? You are amazing. You've saved me. You've saved me from an eternity separated from you, from something that is just unexplainable. But actually, in doing that, the things that God does for us, how he changes our lives and how he changes us and how he helps us and puts people in our path and puts things in our way, is just incredible.
Definitely.
Even though we're just made to worship God. You know, we don't deserve anything that he gives us, and we don't come into his presence to receive that. But when we do, things change. Things change, and we change, and situations change. So I just want to finish by praying for you guys, and just praying in general. You know, just think about worship, and I hope that this has helped you to have a new perspective on it, and I hope it's given you a bit of encouragement to go, do you know what? Yeah, I'm going to step out. I am going to try something different. I'm going to just think about God, and I'm going to think about my relationship with him, because the more that you change and the more that you develop in your relationship and your journey with him, the more people you can help and the more people you can encourage. And that's what it's all about. So Father, we just want to give you praise and glory. I want to thank you that you are such an incredible God. You're all powerful, all knowing, all present. And we love you, Lord. We want to say that you have our adoration, Lord. You have our focus. You have our hearts. And I just pray that we would always put you first, that we would always look to you first, that we would always lift you up first, that we wouldn't look at our earthly selves and our earthly situations first, but that we would first come to you, and that we would give it all to you. And so, Father, I just pray for anyone that's watching that they would be encouraged to just come to you, to just lay everything at your feet, and to just lift up your name, Lord, because we know that you know, even though that is what you want, Lord, you just want us to choose to come to you and give our hearts to you. The things that we receive in return, Lord, is absolutely incredible. And we just want to thank you that you never leave us, you never forsake us, that you're always there for us. And so that just encourages us to worship you even more, Lord, because you're such an amazing God. So we give you glory, we give you honor, we give you praise in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, guys, and we will see you next time.